Hello, hello, and I am here today. Thank you. We had a time shift, but Kelly and I will be talking today, and I'm so excited for her. Before she gets on, I wanted to share a little bit with you about what's coming up, and I will be starting my soul care circle this week. So if you're still interested in joining, let me know. It's going to be a real fun, sacred space for you to come, relax, enjoy, pause for a moment. I'm going to let Kelly on now. And she should be coming in. Hello. Yay.
Hi.
How are you? Good. Yeah. Oh, are you good? Oh.
Yeah, I'm good.
You're good. You're
here.
good.
We're here.
So I'm going to let our audience know that Kelly and I both are teachers, and I had a holiday today, but she had snow day. And for those of you who always wondered what teachers like our teachers get excited about snow days, I think we're more excited than the kids.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. So, so I know, but Kelly ended up shoveling, right? You had to do all the shoveling.
Yeah,
right?
there was so much snow. Oh my gosh. It was, yeah.
We didn't have as much snow, so I didn't sleep well last night, not because I was up for any other reason, but the wind was howling and the rain. It ended up from snow turning into like a sleety hail rain thing, and it was just slamming up against the windows all night. It was crazy here.
Yeah.
But we didn't get as much
well, I'm in Ontario, and you're closer to New York, correct?
Yes. Yep. I'm about an hour north from New York City. So yeah, you guys are a little bit cooler. Anyway, well, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here. I'm really feeling into your story and sharing it. And I see we have
Susan's here.
Susan's here. Hi, Susan, and welcome. Thanks.
She also has a snow day, so this was a good day for Susan as well.
Oh, yay, yeah. Susan! She knows all about the snow day. I know we're like, it's funny because at least corporate America and other people, right? They don't have it. Oh, somebody else just joined us too. Good, yeah. Tessa. Hi, Tessa.
Tesha.
Welcome.
Yeah, Tesha.
Welcome. So Kelly, I would love for you to share your story with our audience, and whether you're listening now or later, Kelly's story is just really one that I feel is one, remarkable, but also two, just your courage and your vulnerability is just amazing. Thanks. So I really want to, let's hear all about Kelly.
Thanks. Well, I'm going to start off and say it wasn't always this way. I wasn't always this open to sharing. I hid for a very long time because I didn't want people to see what was going on in our home. From the outside, it looked like we had the picture perfect life, 2 beautiful kids, and everything was falling apart on the inside. So just a little bit about me. I'm from St. Catharines, Ontario, and about, might have been 6 years ago now. So back in 2016, everything kind of blew up, and I hit my own personal rock bottom. But at the time, I didn't recognize that it was my rock bottom because I was so full of anger. I was so full of blame. I was so full of resentment. Like, how did we get here? And none of this was my fault. And I stayed in that space for a very long time. And if you've ever been in that space, you know that no change is coming from pointing the finger and blaming, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're in a position where you feel stuck or frustrated, always remember that you have more choices than you think you do. Because I remember someone said that to me back in 2016, and they said, well, you have a choice. You're choosing to stay. You're choosing to stay and live through this. Yeah. And I'm like, but you don't get it. I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, I just didn't see a way out because I was so overwhelmed. Addiction ran through our home, and it had been going on for most of our marriage. I just wasn't ready. I saw the red flags, but I used to justify them. I used to minimize them. I used to deny that they were happening. I always thought things would get better. So the red flags were there. I just did a good job of hiding them and ignoring them. Right. So,
Yeah.
Looking back, they were there, gosh, years before we even got married. So yeah, I think as women, we do a good job of denying our own truth and denying what's actually happening. And it's really hard to look at. Like, there's so many layers to my story. And it wasn't until, when someone told me that I was choosing to stay there, I got really angry. I was angry at them for saying that because I played the victim. I wanted help. I wanted support. Why isn't anyone helping me? I didn't see that I had power in my choices at that time.
Yeah.
So, things had to get really bad before they got better. And I remember having that like out of body experience where it was like, almost like my future self. I didn't know it was my future self, but it was like a better version of myself looking down on me and asking me like, what are you doing? Why are you here? Why are you letting this continue? And it was that moment that I realized, wait a minute, maybe I can do something here.
Yeah.
And it was really hard because no one had a clue. Like Anna and I were talking about this the other day. I had a best friend who we used to go on walks together. We used to go to the gym together, and she didn't have a clue what was going on.
Yeah.
Because I did a really good job of putting on a smile and, looking like everything was okay. But meanwhile, like, people knew something was up. Like, you think you're fooling people, they know something's not right.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting, how you said you saw it before possibly you even got married, right? You saw some signs now, looking back in hindsight, right? Looking back. And I also want to tap into the fact that I sometimes think, I want to say as women, because I'm a woman, I don't know what men think, but as a woman, sometimes we think we can fix or we can change things, right? So we go into it like thinking, oh, that's okay. It'll be better because I'll fix that,
right.
like, even if you didn't consciously make that decision, right?
Yeah.
Thinking. So,
and just to take that a step further, like, I have a tagline now, and it's called it's always been you. So like, even though I'm talking about the red flags being there were so many behaviors and patterns of behavior that I was displaying and experiencing. So it really had nothing to do with my partner. Yeah, they were a player in this, I guess, game that we call life, but there was so many things that I was struggling with that I didn't recognize at the time. So now, like, hindsight, looking back, I was a people pleaser. I didn't want to let people down. I didn't know how to say no. I didn't know how to get myself out of situations that made me feel uncomfortable. So I continued staying in those, poor behaviors, for lack of a better word, because I didn't have the confidence, the self-worth, the voice. I didn't know how to advocate for any of those things.
Yeah.
So really, the end result was I ended up in a marriage that was full of addiction. But that wasn't the problem. The problem came years before with me not addressing all of those things then, right? I brought all of those things into my marriage. So
yes. Yeah. Amazing growth in hindsight, right? The hindsight of where
if only we'd had that back then, but we didn't. And I had to go through, I would not be where I am today had I not experienced all of those things. I went to a family program on addiction looking for solutions for my addicted loved one. And it was in doing that I realized I had addictions of my own that needed to be addressed. And it wasn't until I started listening there and becoming a little bit more open. Like, I thought I was just going to learn about someone else, but I started listening. And I think that was key for me, was I always kept an open mind. Some people will hear things and they'll say, oh, that's not me. Like, I used to Google everything, and I would take from Google what worked for me. And if I didn't like what they said, then it didn't apply to me, right? So somewhere the game changed, and I started becoming open, and I started listening.
Yeah.
And I might not have liked what I heard, but I sat with it, and I just really kind of explored it further.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And I think that I mean, I applaud you, one, for sharing the story, and two, for talking about that, because I think that's hard. It's hard to admit maybe our um, contribution to the
Hmm.
illusion. Right?
Yeah,
What we bought into, what part we bought into of what was going on, and what part we didn't buy into, right?
right.
Stuff. So yeah, so you ended up going into a treatment program, right? Is that what you had just said, right? Yeah.
Yes, I did. So first I went as the family member looking for solutions. And then somewhere during the week that I was there, I kind of felt like a little bit like a fraud because there were all these family members who did not have alcoholism or addiction. And they were really hurting and they were really struggling because they wanted help for their addicted loved one. And I was like, wait a minute, where do I fit in here? Because now I saw how alcoholism played a part in my own life. And I saw how I was drinking to avoid my situation. I was drinking to cope with my situation. I was drinking to numb out for my situation. And it didn't make things any better. In fact, the situation was still there. It just continued to get worse. I was
Yeah.
just not dealing with it. So that's when I started, asking some of the counselors, like, we learned about boundaries. That was the first I ever heard of the word. Like now it's like everywhere. But that was new for me then. And I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean
Yeah.
it's okay to say no? What do you
Mm,
mean I don't like? So I started questioning. And so I continued to go for counseling. And then that led into me going to a 6-week treatment program.
wow. Wow.
And, for me, then, like we had just sold our house. That was part of, I used to say we lost everything, but I've been not corrected. But this summer I was working with a coach and she said, did you really lose everything? She said, or did you actually gain? Because she goes, did you have any, like we were, drowning in debt because of the addiction. And she said, what happened after you started taking action and making different choices? Well, then new people came into my life, new experiences came into my life. I found sobriety. All these other good things started to happen. So she's like, did you actually gain from this or did you lose? And that helped me change my perspective.
Yeah. Wow. What a shift that is, right? That's a real shift in perspective. Amazing.
Yeah. And one
Yeah.
of the things for me, like when I got sober, was like, okay, anything I make now is mine. So I'm responsible for everything that comes in and everything that goes out. And I'm a single mom, so every choice that I made was going to have an implication on my kids. So if I'm
Yeah.
going to go blow my money on whatever, they're going to be the ones who will be affected by that, right? So it was always like making conscious choices every time I made a choice.
Yeah. And I'd like you to speak to, I think when we spoke earlier, about that choice of not wanting to go, because what were you going to do with your kids, right? I think there was a point like, how can I go to treatment or do something when I have,
Mm-hmm.
right, my
Yeah.
children, right? And how difficult that was for you.
Yeah. And things were very, things were very, even rocky is like too tame of a word. Things were very volatile then, right? Because there
Yeah.
was so much um, accusation towards each other. And I honestly think, truth be told, I think at the very beginning, I only went to treatment so that I would look. No, actually, I wanted clarity, but I also wanted to look like the better parent. There's probably a little bit of ego there.
Mm,
Um, but when I got there, I realized how badly I needed to be there. And as things started to get better, like even when I left treatment, and I wrote about this in my last book, I had two choices. I could keep going down the path that I had been on before, and I knew where I ended up, and that didn't turn out very well.
yeah.
Or I could try things a different way and be open to new experiences, which all came through sobriety. And I had to learn how really to live again. I had to learn how to manage my finances. I had to learn how to just be myself and show
Yeah.
up as myself. And I had to make new friends, right?
Yeah.
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 So it was really you know, a new beginning in so many ways.
Yeah. And a beautiful beginning as well. As um ugly as it was or messy as it was to begin with, right? It turned
Yeah.
the beauty in it and stuff. That I just love your courage and your strength to share this story, because I feel like it's silent. I feel like so many people suffer
Hmm.
from this form. I think we've talked about this form or another form of it in silence and hiding and fear of what will people say and what, like the whole thing, right? All of the people pleasing and all of
Yeah.
the worrying and trying to make everybody else happy and fixing and judgment and everything. And um, I love the point of when you're coming down to choosing you, right? Choosing
Yeah.
yourself and really healing all of those pieces within you and growing and evolving all the things that you are able to blossom into. And I think that's such a testament
Yeah.
to you, where you are now and stuff. I would love if you would like to for you to share some strategies for people who may find themselves in this situation or a similar situation, like some of those pieces that you would recommend might be like the first baby step, the first little baby step
Um,
into.
yeah, I'm just trying to think back to how isolated I felt then and how afraid I was to open up. But finally I did. And I remember when I started opening up, I would only give like snippets of the story because I wasn't sure how much that person could handle, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, and also I think there's a fine line too between sharing for support and sharing for, um, how do I put this? Like for attention, like not for attention, but like the poor me, but you're not willing to do anything about it too.
Right.
So,
Okay.
and I know it's very scary at the beginning. I think the biggest thing I could say, baby steps, is you have to start taking care of you first. Because if you're living alongside addiction, if you're consumed in that chaos, you're not sleeping, you're not eating, you're not taking care of yourself. So it really comes down to those basic self-care. I know I had to go to the doctor and start taking I was getting panic attacks, anxiety attacks. I wasn't sleeping at night. So I had to do some basic steps, like making that appointment with the doctor. That was something I avoided too, because now you're putting yourself in front of someone saying, I need help with this, and they're going to ask you why.
Mm,
Right? So it's
yeah.
just, you have to take those steps. Otherwise, if you can't take care of yourself, like I needed to learn how to sleep through the night so that I had clarity of decision making during the day, because every moment things changed.
Yeah.
Um, um, and I don't have to explain all the details. If you're living with addiction, every minute it's
Yeah.
it's a different chaos. It's a different eruption. It's a different fire that you're putting out. And it's not always the other person. It's you also. You're not in control of your own emotions. And there's a whole level of like anger and outbursts, and because you're just so frustrated, you don't know what to do. So if I would give someone any suggestions, it would start with taking care of yourself. If you're drinking too much to numb and avoid what's going on, maybe start there. Like
Yeah.
start, cutting back. And the biggest thing is reach out and talk to a friend, or even a doctor. Like you just have to find those people that you can start. And for me, it was so scary because I was a teacher and I thought, what are they going to say about me?
Yeah.
I am supposed to be someone who is a good example at my school, right? And then on like the flip side, I felt like I was living a lie.
Yeah.
So I didn't ask for help for a very long time, and things just got worse.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the basic is asking for help, and it may be a friend, it may be a doctor, it may be a therapist, it may be who knows, who
Mm-hmm.
knows, it can be somebody. um and I think I want to share that you will know the person that you can share with at some point, because you won't feel the judgment, and you'll just know that you'll be
Yeah.
supported, right?
And
I
I
mean.
would even say, like, sometimes friends won't let go of what you've shared, right? Like,
Mm.
friends can be a good support, but they also don't forget things. So you may have moved on and have been able to forgive and have come to a place of understanding and compassion, but that friend hasn't done the same work that you have, and they're still in, 2016 story.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're in 2022 story, right?
Yeah.
So they haven't had to go through the healing and the progression that you have. So, even starting with, I went to therapists, I went to drug counselors, I went to addiction counselors, you name it, I went to them. But the problem was I was always going there and talking about someone else. This is what they're doing. Why can't they stop this? I was never there to get, and not at the beginning, I wasn't there to get help for me.
Yeah.
Like, how do I make myself strong enough so that I can make choices on what I'm going to do next?
Yeah. And I think that is an essential piece of information, that when I don't know, when you're going for assistance, when you're going for looking for support, that you're going with the mindset that the support isn't for necessarily the other person, at least not initially, right?
Right.
To shift that. I'm not going to the doctors to get this other person help. I'm going to the doctors because I need to know what I need to do in this situation, right? I think that's a really big shift that I don't know if mainstream thinks about that. I don't know. I never thought about that. That's like light bulb going on, like woo, 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 like really thinking about that when you're seeking help, the help is to start with you within.
Yeah.
And
It
then
has to start with you. And I remember one of the coaches that I worked with, her sons both struggled with addiction. And I remember the doctor saying to her, if you don't get yourself well first, because she was worn down, she was exhausted, she was like just hanging on by a thread. He said, if you don't get yourself well first, when the time comes that they're ready to ask for support, you need to be at your strongest. You need to be the person that they can go to, not this person that's still on the ground, right? And that was very powerful when I heard that, because that person eventually, or they may or may not want that support, but if your life is still a mess, you can't help them.
No, right? Yeah, I think that's just I think such an important piece that isn't always, the caretaker or the person living with the person who's addicted. We never see enabler like that. We never look at that piece, right? We always think about the person who got the help and recovered and blah, 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 right? And I'm not dismissing that, because that's a long and very hard, but that other piece is really, really important. So I think that,
Yeah, and when I talk about family members, I honestly believe they are the ones who suffer the most through the addiction, because they're the ones who are experiencing the brunt from the addicted person, right? The addicted person is addicted, so they don't even know what they're doing half the time, right? You're the one feeling it, you're the one carrying it. And that's why it's so important to get that help first. And I think that's where that codependency piece comes in, and that's why it's so closely tied to addiction, because we want to help, we want to fix. And so it's really getting to that point of understanding that we can't do it for them, but we can do is be the best version of ourselves, so that when they're ready to ask for that support, we're able to do that from a loving place, not from a place of anger, and not from a place that's also going to compromise who we are and the work that we've done to get there.
That's essential. You're absolutely correct, because you can't be a support if you're not healthy and not in a good, not having clarity, not well rested, not well fed, like all of those life skills that you need in order to sustain a recovery, right? To sustain the journey of recovery and stuff with somebody. So that's a beautiful. I would love, I know you have some programs that you have and some options, like, even just Facebook groups where you're offering support and stuff. I'd love for you to share what you offer, and then where people can kind of find you and hook up with you, and what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. I have, so my whole premise around what I do now is called Choosing You. Last year, I had a Facebook group about the addicted loved one, and then as I started peeling back the layers, I realized how big this piece of choosing you, because it all started when I started choosing myself and I started taking different actions and behaviors. So my Facebook group now is called I Chose Me, and
I love it.
we just started in November, and it's growing beautifully.
Mhm.
And so you can find me there on Facebook. And also, I do have a new program launching the beginning of February. I'll be running a masterclass this weekend and another one next weekend. So we can post the link in the comments for that. And that is called, I think it's going to be called Choosing You, because
I love
seems to fit right now with everything that I'm doing. And it's really scaling back to that piece of choosing yourself. And that's really the basis for any change that's going to
Yeah.
come next.
Yeah, I love it. I
Mm.
love your Facebook group name. I choose me because I think that it's so true. It's so oh, I love it. I love it at so many levels. I love it because often in self-care, right? We think of things can be selfish, right? They'll say self-care isn't selfish, or you're not. And when I think of that statement, I choose me, I I always feel like that's like, as a mom, I want my children to always choose themselves. I want them to make,
Mm-hmm.
right. So it's always like, I think it's our essence is when we
Yeah,
when we live in alignment with our essence and our truth, we're always choosing us. We're always choosing
right.
ourselves.
And it's funny how you say about the mom thing. Like, that's what happened when my daughter, I think she was 5, and I was watching her kind of watch this out of the corner of her eye, whether she realized what was happening or not. I thought, I wouldn't want her to choose this for her life. So why is it okay for me to choose this for mine?
Yeah,
And
right.
that's when things started to change for me. It wasn't until 4 years after that did I actually find the courage to leave. But that's when I was triggered, like, okay, wait a minute, something has to change here.
Yes, yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. Yeah,
So
I love that.
yeah, so just a quick thing about the Facebook group. I wanted to share this because we had a connection call this week, and I think it's really important for women, well, anyone especially, to stay connected to people, because when I was going through um, the thick of it, I wasn't talking to anyone, right?
Mhm.
I wasn't even doing things. I wasn't going out. Um, so that's part of the Facebook group, is having these community connection calls, so that when you listen to other women, you're not alone, because
Yes.
we're all going through the same thing. We all have this, details might be different,
Yeah.
but the feelings are all the same.
Yes. Yeah.
Hmm.
And you're there, and even if you aren't ready to share, right?
Yeah,
I think just hearing somebody else shares gives you that little piece of hope, that little piece, right, of faith that something can change and may
right.
change, right?
Yeah,
And um, again, it's like it's the baby step. The baby
yeah,
step would to be in a group like that is completely supportive of of the of you as the caretaker, the enabler, like whatever has been going on, you as that person. So choosing
right.
you and getting healthy, it's part of the getting healthy space
Yeah, for
stuff.
sure.
I love that. So I would definitely, if anyone, whether you're listening to this today or a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, right, reaching out to Kelly and finding, maybe going into her group, or just kind of get to know her, find her on
Yeah,
Instagram,
absolutely.
yeah, or Facebook, and just kind of be in her energy and space. And I think it's very encouraging. Yeah, it's just an encouraging energy to be in. And I also think that, um, addiction comes in very different forms, right? I know
Yeah,
we're talking drugs and maybe alcohol right today, but I think, there's other addictions that people do have,
yeah,
that follow a very similar thing. People have shopping addictions, food addictions, a lot of different addictions,
yeah.
right? Gambling,
Hmm.
that would follow a similar pattern.
Yeah,
Like, right, if somebody's gambling and their life savings is gone, and then that family's trying to deal with, right? You said
yeah.
you lost everything, kind of thing, and debt and all of that stuff. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's such a, I love that you're shedding light on this
Thank
topic,
you.
because I think it's been a taboo topic. It's been the secret, the hidden, right?
Yeah, and addiction does take on many forms, and so does addictive relationships, right? Us getting
Yeah,
into unhealthy relationships that we know aren't good for us. So it can
yeah,
present itself in many different ways.
yeah. And I also think the bottom line is that really when in all of those pieces that you just said and that I was saying, that when we go from within, we go in and we see and we start to get centered and quiet and listening and not worrying about what other people think, or if they're happy or whatever, thinking about
Mm,
everybody else but ourselves. If we start to really focus in and make ourselves happy and choose
yeah,
ourselves, then everything falls into place on the outside. Your children, your
yeah,
relationships, your work, your bills, everything falls into place.
yeah.
But if you're not choosing yourself consistently, then there is room for resentment and anger and all those other pieces.
Well, it's almost like you're like at an inner war within yourselves if
Yeah,
you are always choosing others, or if you're doing things that compromise your values, if you're not ready to speak up or use your voice. Like, you just have this war within yourselves because you're not advocating for your needs, and that's really hard to do if you've never done that before.
yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And I think that's a great word to say, advocate for your needs, and
Mm-hmm.
in a loving and supportive way, right? And not,
Yeah,
right? That's it. Oh, Kelly, this was so great. I
love
just
this.
love connecting with you. I feel like you are such an inspiration, and you just have this incredible, beautiful energy. And I'm really excited for what you're going to do in this world. And I really want to encourage anybody moving forward. You don't need to suffer alone. You don't need to suffer in silence. There's support for you, and without judgment at all, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
beautiful support there to be whatever it is you require at that moment, whether it's a
Yeah.
hug, maybe a tear, or just silence.
Mm-hmm.
You're there, right?
Yeah,
So
and I think, for me, when I first started sharing, it was the holding space, right? Having someone who has been down that road. Like, there's nothing that I don't hear now that I have not experienced. Like,
mhm.
you name it, I've done it, or I've been down.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think when
Mhm.
you're first starting to share, you're like, oh, no one else has done this. But I think just having that, yeah, place of grace and understanding and non-judgment, it goes a long way for
Yeah.
just to someone to say, oh, you get me.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Oh,
yeah.
I love that. So, well, I want to thank you so much for Mina was just on.
Oh,
Hi, Mina.
we've had quite a few people. So thank you for coming out
Yeah,
and
thank you
spending
for
time with us.
Yes, this was great. Thank you, everybody who joined us and who will join us in the future. This was really, I think, a very important topic that needs more airtime, is the way I will say it.
Yeah,
So,
for
but I
sure.
want to thank you, Kelly, and I know we will definitely connect again on different platforms, maybe, but we'll connect maybe here again too, because I think that this is something
Awesome.
that I would like to keep sharing. For people, I feel like I said, it takes a lot of courage, and I think that the more people hear about it, the less the stigma is taken away, the more support that's given, more space that we can hold for this topic, the
Yeah,
more readily or easily people will say yes to it, to support. So
yeah, for sure. Well,
thank you.
thank you for doing this. Yeah.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you very much. Everybody have a great afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your snow day.
Thanks. Hope I don't have to shovel again because that was a lot. But
All
all
right,
right, nice
everybody. Bye.
chatting.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.